I want to tell you and to assure you the team that I have chosen, I have no doubt that we will deliver what you have mandated us to do as the people of this country. You must assist me to give this team a chance to do their work. What is important is not who is there for me, and it should not be who is there for you. For you, you should wait the service to be delivered. Then you start to talk.
Hey there, Breakdown family. Listen, I want us to pay close attention to something big that just happened in Africa, specifically in Namibia. Now, I know Namibia doesn't always make international headlines, right? It's a small country, just over 2.5 million people tucked between Angola and South Africa. But what just happened there is historic, is global, and it could change the landscape for women in politics forever. Namibia just became the first country in the world where the top 3 government positions, the president, vice president, and speaker of parliament, are all women. Let me say that again. Not just Africa's first, not just the global South's first, but the world's first. Now, I want you to sit with that for a moment, because the United States, the so-called leader of the free world, the oldest modern democracy, the country that lectures the globe about gender equality, had 2 chances to elect a woman president and chose not to, twice recently. Yet here comes Namibia, this young, quiet nation on the southwest edge of Africa, doing what the so-called superpowers couldn't. But that's not all. Namibia's new president, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, didn't stop at the symbolism. She appointed 9 women to her cabinet, including key ministries like finance, education, foreign affairs, and gender equality. Over 60% of the government's top leadership is now female. This isn't just symbolic, it's systemic, it's deliberate, and it's happening at a moment when the country and the continent need bold leadership the most. Namibia is facing serious economic challenges, high unemployment, especially among youth, and over-reliance on mining. And now, with massive oil and gas discoveries, huge decisions ahead about how to manage new wealth and avoid the infamous resource curse. So today on The Breakdown, we're not just celebrating a win for gender equality, we're asking the deeper question. If this works, could Namibia become the global case study for what happens when women lead at the highest levels? And could this be the leadership shift that Africa and maybe the world has been waiting for? Because let's face it, leadership has been failing Africa. Yes, but maybe, just maybe, young leaders and women are the solution we've been desperately needing. History is being written right now, and Namibia is holding the pen. But before we dive in, if this conversation matters to you, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and consider joining our membership community where we go deeper, connect directly, and build together. Your support also helps keeps The Breakdown and Pen and Genius TV independent, unapologetic, and rooted in truth. All right, now let's get into it. So to really appreciate what's happening in Namibia today, we've got to rewind and understand where this nation came from. Because Namibia's story is one of struggle, survival, and sovereignty hard-earned.
In the late 19th century, Chancellor Otto von Bismarck oversaw the colonization of modern-day Namibia, naming it German Southwest Africa. Soon, German settlers started arriving at the colony, looking for a better life. They took land, cattle, and built towns in the image of their homeland. Those land grabs deprived local people of their means of existence, stoking tensions. And in 1904, things reached a boiling point. 2 Black indigenous groups, the Nama and Herero, launched a violent rebellion against settlers. But the settlers were not alone. They had an army backing them up. In response to the rebellion, German General Lothar von Trotha issued a now infamous extermination order, stating that within German borders, every Herero, with or without a gun, with or without cattle, will be shot. Historians widely consider what happened next to be the first genocide of the 20th century. Imperial soldiers killed thousands of Herero and Nama. They drove many into the desert where they died and put survivors into concentration camps. There, they experimented on inmates and used them as slave labor.
Namibia was colonized not once, but twice. In the late 1800s, it was taken by Germany, becoming known as German Southwest Africa. And that's when one of the darkest chapters in modern African history began. Between 1904 and 1908, German colonial forces committed what is widely recognized as the first genocide of the 20th century against the Herero and Nama people. Tens of thousands were killed. Others were forced into concentration camps. It was systematic, violent, and designed to wipe out entire ethnic groups to make way for settler land grabs. Germany lost its colonies after World War I, but Namibia didn't gain freedom. Instead, it was handed over to South Africa, which imposed its brutal system of apartheid in Namibia too, restricting Black Namibians from owning land, voting, or accessing equal education and jobs. The liberation struggle. By the mid-20th century, Namibia had had enough. And that's when SWAPO comes in, the Southwest Africa's People Organization. It began as a liberation movement and led a decades-long armed resistance against South African rule. SWAPO fought from exile. They lobbied the UN. They faced violent crackdowns, but they didn't back down. After years and years of struggle, and with growing international pressure, Namibia finally gained independence in 1990. That was just 35 years ago. Think about that. This country is younger than many of the people listening to this podcast right now. It was born out of resistance, out of demand to be free and self-determined. Since 1990, Namibia has been relatively stable. It's had peaceful transitions of power, and is considered one of the more democratic countries in Africa. But challenges remain, especially around inequality, land redistribution, youth unemployment, and the lingering effects of apartheid on education and wealth. And now, for the first time, that next chapter is being led by women who lived through that colonial trauma, women who were part of the liberation, women who know what's at stake here. So when we talk about Namibia being the first country in the world to put women in charge at the highest levels, we're not just talking about a country that wants change. We're talking about a country that fought for it hard, that bled for it, and survived for it. In that contest, yes, it matters. Because Namibia isn't just leading, it's leading with history in its hands. So now let's meet the women making history. First up, President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah.
I believe that having been elected as president of my country will encourage women from all walks of life to stand up and to be counted with a clear understanding that I was not elected because I'm a woman, but on merit.
She's not new to this. She's true to this. Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah is Namibia's first female president, but her journey began long before this moment. She was part of Namibia's liberation struggle against apartheid, South Africa. A lifelong member of the ruling party SWAPO, she's held multiple ministerial positions over the years, including foreign affairs, where she built a strong reputation as a seasoned diplomat and Pan-African voice. She is tough, strategic, and respected across the continent. And now she's making history as the first woman elected head of state in Southern Africa. Let that sink in. Then there is the vice president, Lucia Witbooi.
When I say I, you state your name. I,
Lucia Witbooi,
do hereby swear that I will strive to the best of my ability
that I will strive to the best of my ability
to uphold,
to uphold,
protect,
protect,
and defend
as the supreme law
the Constitution of the Republic of Namibia.
the Constitution of the Republic of Namibia.
Lucia with Bowie brings a different kind of power to the table. She's a former teacher, a member of parliament, and someone deeply rooted in community work. She represents the kind of leadership that's grounded in education, public service, and quiet strength. The kind of leadership that listens before it speaks. She's the second woman ever to hold the vice president in Namibia, but the first to do it alongside a female president. Together, they've already made the vice president's office more engaged with youth and rural development initiatives in the first few weeks of leadership. And then you have the Speaker of Parliament, Sarah Kugongelwa Amarila.
Honorable Dr. Sarah Kugongelwa Amarila, I hand over the instruments that will guide your work, and I'm absolutely confident, and I'm particularly delighted by the spirit shown here in the name of democracy. Over to you.
If you've been following Namibian politics, you know her name. She served as prime minister for nearly a decade, the first woman to do so. Now she's taken the gavel as Speaker of the National Assembly, making her the top legislative authority in the country. So let's break that down real quick. Executive branch, led by women. Legislative branch, led by a woman. Presidential succession line, all women. This isn't just a few appointments. This is a realignment of power of sorts, an intentional reshaping of who gets to lead, who gets to decide, and who gets to dream at the highest levels of government. In the cabinet, President Nandi Ndaitwah didn't stop at the top three. She appointed 9 women to ministerial roles, covering everything from finance, which controls national spending, foreign affairs, where diplomacy happens, education, which shapes the next generation, yes, and gender equality. Because, let's be honest, without women in leadership, that ministry is often just for show. But now, it has teeth. Now it has power. This isn't a photo op. This is policy. This is power. And it's being wielded unapologetically by women, many of whom came from the struggle, from the classroom, from the community. They represent different sectors, different regions, different styles of leadership, but they're united by one mission: to build a Namibia that works for everyone. Now let's talk about why this moment really matters. Because this isn't just some feel-good gender equality milestone to clap for and move on. Namibia's new government is stepping into power at a time of serious national challenges. The kind of challenges that test even the most experienced administrations. First, the economy. Namibia has been struggling with high unemployment, especially among young people. As of 2024, youth unemployment hovered around 47%. That's nearly half of the country's future workforce sitting idle, frustrated, disconnected, and uncertain about their prospects. Yes, the country has natural resources from diamonds to uranium and a booming green hydrogen potential, but it's been too dependent on the extractive industries, and the wealth, it hasn't always trickled down. President Nandi Ndaitwah has made it clear that's going to change. In her inaugural address, she promised a shift toward economic diversification, especially through investment in agriculture to reduce food imports and create jobs in rural areas, tourism to take advantage of Namibia's natural beauty and wildlife, and green energy, turning Namibia into a clean energy hub on the continent. I love that. And she's already making big strategic moves that send the message that she means business. This is not just all talk. She's reorganized the Ministry of Mines and Energy, placing oversight of the oil and gas sector directly under her office.
The new emerging industry of oil and gas need to be managed in the manner that maximizes benefit for all Namibians. It's a new industry. Nobody knows about it. Very few. We are all learning. And as we are starting, it needs closer supervision. Therefore, the management of this industry will fall under the office of the President.
This is a significant move. By putting oil under presidential oversight before production begins, President Namdi Ndaitwah is setting the tone for national ownership. She is guarding against future corruption and signaling to investors that Namibia intends to lead with structure and strategy. So you better come correct. Then there's the issue of inequality, right? Namibia is one of the most unequal countries in the world. And that's a legacy of apartheid, but also a failure of past governments to implement structural change. So this administration, led by women who've seen that inequality up close, is promising a more inclusive approach to growth, one that looks beyond GDP and asks, are everyday people actually living better lives? And here's the real challenge. This government is going to have to deliver because representation alone isn't enough anymore. And she knows that. That's why she's asking Namibians to not judge a book by its cover. So the question isn't, can women lead? That's been answered. The real question is, can this all-women leadership team turn Namibia's promise into progress and silence the skeptics, not with slogans, but with results? The stakes are high, not just for Namibia, but for the entire continent, and honestly, for the world, the whole world watching. Because if this works, if Namibia can break the mold and show what happens when leadership reflects the entire population, not just the elite few, then this country could become a global blueprint for the future of governance. Not just African governance, but governance, period. Now let's zoom out for a quick second, because I don't think the world has fully processed what just happened in Namibia. This is not a common story. This is not just another leadership shuffle. This is global history in the making. Namibia is now the first country in the world where women simultaneously hold all three top positions in government: president, vice president, speaker of the National Assembly. And no, this didn't happen in Sweden, not in New Zealand, not in Canada or France or Germany or the United States. It happened in Namibia, a Southern African nation that less than 35 years ago was still under apartheid-era rule. That alone is revolutionary. So how does this stack up globally? Let's compare. Rwanda has been celebrated for having the highest percentage of women in parliament, 61%. But its president, Paul Kagame, has been in power since 2000. So while the legislature is female-led, the executive is still male-dominated. Let's look at Finland. Finland had a female prime minister, Sanna Marin, and a strong record on gender equity. But her government lost re-election in 2023, and she was often undermined by the media for partying. Seriously. New Zealand. Jacinda Ardern made headlines for her empathetic leadership style. But again, only the prime minister was female. The rest of the top posts still held by men. Only Namibia has said, let's build a government where women aren't just represented, they're leading it. Not symbolically, not quietly, but boldly. And that's a huge deal, not just for gender equality, but for how we define power in the 21st century. Because, let's be honest, we've seen what leadership by men alone has produced. So maybe, just maybe, it's time to ask, what would the world look like if women actually had equal power to shape it? Namibia is about to help us answer that question, not in theory, not in think tanks, but in real time. And I'm excited for that. So what happens if this works? What if this isn't just a headline or historic first, but the start of a new kind of leadership model, one that delivers real results? Because here's the thing. If this works in Namibia, it could change the conversation everywhere. First, Africa would have a new blueprint. Namibia could become a case study for what African governance looks like when it's inclusive, ethical, and forward-thinking. If this government delivers on jobs, education, healthcare, and economic justice, it might force other African nations to rethink how they build leadership pipelines, how they treat women in politics, and how they structure power. It could help dismantle the idea that strong leadership must be authoritarian or male-dominated. Second, the world would have no more excuses. See, for decades, the global north has treated gender equity in leadership as a nice to have. They'll talk about equality in speeches, throw some funding at women's programs, and keep the top jobs for men. But if Namibia, a small African nation with far fewer resources, can create a majority female government and make it work, then the so-called developed world will have to ask itself, what's really stopping us? Third, the narrative would shift globally. I mean, think about the little girl in Ghana or Guyana or Guatemala watching this story. Think about the message it sends. You're not just allowed to lead, you're expected to. You can shape nations. This is about more than quotas or representation. It's about building systems where women's leadership is normalized, not exceptional. And yes, it's about outcomes too. Because when women lead, the data shows we can have more inclusive economic policies, strong investments in health and education, greater attention to peace, equity, and long-term sustainability. And if Namibia leans into this and succeeds, it will do more than break barriers. It will reset expectations for what leadership can and should be. So, as Namibia embarks on this bold new chapter, the question is no longer, can women lead? The question now is, what kind of world becomes possible when they do? Because if this government gets it right, if they govern with vision, with courage, and with results, then Namibia won't just be a footnote in history. It'll be a turning point. It will start a real conversation globally. So, where do we go from here? Namibia, a country many people couldn't point to on a map, is now showing the world what bold, inclusive leadership can look like. A female president, a female vice president, a female speaker of parliament, and a cabinet that reflects the full power of its people, not just the men. This isn't just a win for gender equality. It's a challenge to every lazy assumption about who deserves to lead and what leadership should look like. So the next time someone tells you women aren't ready to lead, tell them to watch Namibia. Tell them to study it, because history is unfolding and is being written in the hands of women. So now I want to hear from you. What do you think about this moment? What do you think it means for Africa, for your country, for you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. You know I'm in there with you. And share this episode with 1 or 2 people who need to hear about what is happening in Namibia. And let's throw our support behind them. And more importantly, pay close attention. Because if this works, if Namibia's women-led government delivers, then we just might be witnessing history, the start of something revolutionary. And I am here for it. And you know the breakdown will be right here to cover it. That's it for today's show. Thanks for staying with me. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng. Until next time, take care. Hey you! Thanks so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Also, visit face2faceafrica.com for your daily news and updates on what's going on within the global Black community so you can stay informed.